three movies together that I'm going to talk about, and that is a triumvirate of romance movies that have been released around the Valentine's Day holiday, of course. And I'm talking about Hard Eyes, Love Hurts, and The Gorge. And I'll start off quickly with Hard Eyes, which is a more of a slasher horror movie, but it does center on a romance that basically follows a hard eyes killer. He's a serial killer that strikes in Seattle, and he's killing couples essentially within the town of Seattle. And he actually moves across the country and kills multiple couples. And basically, this pair of coworkers, they run into each other. This pair of coworkers is played by Olivia Holt and Mason Gooding, and they're mistaken for a couple. They're not actually together, but they end up in a situation where they're mistaken for a couple, and now they're being chased down by this hard eyes killer. And then the movie sets on that course there. The movie was okay. It was fine. I was expecting a little bit more. These are the same people that have made the new Scream movies. And so this Hard Eyes film is very irreverent and sort of self-referential in that way. It certainly knows what types of film it is. It knows what types of films it's sort of making fun of. And I think the best part of it is the chemistry between Olivia Holt and Mason Gooding. They're pretty good here, but it did ultimately kind of fall in some conventional traps that I think I'm used to seeing with a lot of those irreverent horror movie sort of pseudo comedies that we're getting lately, especially considering that these same production people have made the Scream movies. In fact, the final act of this movie feels very reminiscent of that most recent Scream movie, Scream 6. And so that was one of the things that was a big drawback for me, but it's still, I think, a pretty fine movie. And I know a lot of people are enjoying it. The next one, Love Hurts. This is the brand new movie starring Ke Quan and Ariana DeBose. I think it's best to just classify this as a John Wick ripoff. It's another sort of John Wick ripoff that we're getting. Ke Quan, he's playing a realtor who has a past, basically as a crime assassin, in some respects, but basically he gets tracked down by his long lost brother, who's also a part of that underground crime ridden world, and now he has to confront his past essentially. And this movie, I didn't necessarily have high hopes or high expectations for it because it never looked that great. And unfortunately, it did not meet the mark at all. This is something that I hate to see for Ke Quan, specifically an Academy Award winner, coming off of incredible performance in Everything Everywhere All at Once. And Ariana DeBose as well, also an Academy Award winner recently, coming off of that performance in West Side Story, to now doing something like this that just doesn't work. The story's not that interesting. The action's okay. Ke Quan commits. That's the best part of it. But I just hate to see him in this position where he's doing everything in his power, but the movie around him is just failing in every regard. And I hate to say it as well. I think we might have to confront the idea, and we talked about it recently, Ariana DeBose. I don't know how much of a good actor she is. I think we have to like really
lightning in the bottle, huh? She did it once, and then
I think we might have to talk about that. And that particular lightning in the bottle, that might have just been a version of herself, something very much connected to her own roots and her upbringing and her person. But all these other roles that she's played, they've just not worked. And the last one I'll just quickly mention, The Gorge. This is a brand new movie on Apple TV Plus, directed by Scott Derrickson, coming off of the Black Phone. Black Phone 2 is coming out this year. He'll also be directing. This is about two elite snipers who receive an identical mission. They basically have to travel to a secret location and guard the west and east sides of a deep gorge for a whole year without any outside contact or communication with anybody. But they ultimately end up coming across each other's paths because they're on the opposite sides of this gorge. This movie starring Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy. I expected this movie to be complete shit. I thought it was going to be absolute drivel. Turns out it was okay. It was solid. It was a solid movie. It's not great by any means. Some of the CGI is spotty, but there's a lot of action. And really these two, I think, again, with any of these romance movies that we're getting, this Valentine's Day programming, it's all based on the chemistry, and those two work really, really well together. Like, both of them individually are actors that I really like, and when you bring them together, Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy, they actually work pretty well together. And so some of the action is pretty decent. The story it's thin and it's very flimsy, but it's a pretty fun ride. It's a pretty fun action, science fiction, romance sort of ride that's never really all that boring. I think you're pretty invested and pretty locked in, and it ultimately produced the largest launch for a film on Apple TV Plus. This is their most successful launch.
What?
I think it actually it surpassed Wolves, the Brad Pitt George Clooney movie. I think it was a smart move. Like, Valentine's Day programming, they dropped it at the right time. They didn't have a ton of other stuff going on. Like, Severance is obviously their big show, but they didn't have a ton of other stuff going on. And I think word of mouth too. People saw this and just said, like, hey, it's solid. If you need just something to watch and just tap into It's a solid movie. It's not the greatest thing ever you're going to see, but it's a solid Valentine's Day romance action sci-fi flick. So it worked in most respects, I think. And Scott Derrickson, he's still doing interesting stuff. I'm glad that he's outside of the MCU and he can produce these original stories and do something a little bit different. So yeah, overall, I think this is a year where not everything hits when you program around a holiday, but I'm just glad that we got options. Like all of these movies represent something different. They're action, they're horror, they're sci-fi, and even Companion, another one we talked about a couple of weeks ago. That's Valentine's Day programming. So I'm just glad that we're getting all these options, even if they might not all necessarily work in the ways that they try to. But it's good to have these different types of movies that I think historically you wouldn't see drop in theaters or get that much attention. They're actually turning out to be relatively successful.
Yeah, it's really interesting, I think, to see that trend. That I feel like I don't know if there's always this kind of film during Valentine's weekend in particular. I was like, whoa, this is kind of a lot a lot going on here. Hard Eyes, Love Hurts, and like you said, The Gorge, which I think it helps that like Severance is on, because as soon as Severance goes off and you go back to the Apple TV screen, it's like, oh wait, what's this movie? That's when I seen it. I was like, wait, what is this thing? The Gorge. That's cool. I haven't watched it yet, but yeah, man, can't wait to get into it. I think pretty good cast for The Gorge. I was surprised. I was like, whoa, look at these people. So yeah, man, that's pretty dope.